Hey guys, so I want to talk to you a little bit today about depersonalization and derealization, which I've had for about 9 years on and off. So I know that you already know what depersonalization is and what derealization is, and so I'm not going to explain it all to you because I'm sure you've already looked all that up. But what you're really interested in is what are some techniques and ways that you can get through it and overcome it. Basically, 9 years ago, I was out with a bunch of friends, and towards the end of the evening, I just started feeling really weird. I felt really disconnected from everything, and it was very scary. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I was having my first panic attack, and I was doing my best to try and make sure that nobody around me knew what was going on. But of course, it was very frightening. Went home. Contacted the doctor the next day, realized that I needed to go in and talk to the doctor because I was just scared out of my mind, thought I was going crazy, couldn't sleep, spent days not being able to sleep. So I went into the doctor, and the doctor took my blood, did a full panel blood test on me, and everything was fine, didn't have any issues. And so basically they said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. uh, so sent me on my way, and I thought, well, maybe this will just be something that I'll get through eventually. Um, but I never did. It just kept going and going and going, and I was having trouble sleeping. And for those of you who have derealization, you need your sleep, you need your rest, and so not sleeping is going to do the opposite of what you want it to do. It's going to make it worse. So I went through this for a few years, and eventually I got a new doctor, and this doctor put me on 100 milligrams a day of venlafaxine, which is the generic for Fexer, and diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder. And so I started taking the medicine, and I felt better within a couple of months. I'd say it mostly had gone away. And so that was about 2011 or 2012. By the time I was totally felt fine, and I had felt fine until even last year in 2014. I stopped taking my medication altogether because things were going so well. I felt like I didn't need it anymore, and I was without my medication for about 7 or 8 months. And I felt like, wow, I'm never going to need this again. And then I finally relapsed with some derealization back in about May or to June of this year, 2015, and it's November 19th. And even though I had already been through this before, and I knew deep down that it wasn't something that was going to kill me or something that was going to make me go crazy, unfortunately, I just felt overwhelmed by it. You think irrational thoughts, you don't know what's going to happen to you, you feel so disconnected. You're not able to interact with the people around you the same way. Your memory is completely shot, and it's just very frightening. And a lot of people have different manifestations of depersonalization, derealization, and they think different thoughts. And what made it scary for me the second time around, unlike the first time, was not only did I feel detached, but also I was having all this existential questioning. Why are we here? How did we come to be? Why do we have arms and legs? All these silly questions, but they feel very serious to you at the time. And also, I just had this feeling of, am I going to fade out into like some comatose vegetative state? And even though that never happens, it just feels like it's going to happen eventually, and it's just a matter of time. So anyways, I've been dealing with this since about May or June, and it got really strong in June and July. I ended up having to take a few days off of work to deal with it, and I was just so frustrated with myself because I thought that I had gotten past this and that it was never coming back again, but for some reason it did. Now, the one thing that you have to realize is that what causes derealization or depersonalization is one of only a few things. Number one, you either have had some sort of brain damage before from a physical, maybe you got into a car accident. Maybe you have what's called temporal lobe disorder, which can also cause um, epilepsy and different manifestations from your trauma and or your issue with your temporal lobes. But most people don't have that. That's a very rare circumstance. For most people, it's one of two things, and sometimes they go together. Is you either have had post-traumatic stress disorder. That could be anything from you were in the army, you went over to Afghanistan, and you saw some really bad things, and now you're dealing with the shell shock from your military service. Or it could be you had a very abusive childhood, any combination of things. But typically what happens is you have anxiety or you have depression or both, and you have developed an anxious thought pattern. And now you're analyzing, it's what you call hypervigilant, where you analyze every single little feeling that you have within you, and you every tiny feeling that you have that feels slightly different, you're now building it up in your head. And at first you don't notice it as much, but over time, when you have high levels of anxiety over a long period of time, maybe you're worried about work, maybe you're worried about a relationship, money, anything. It doesn't have to be anything more significant than what anybody else in the world deals with, but because you are an anxious person by nature, it's going to cause you to have a disassociation when your levels of stress are at a very high point for an extended period of time. And it's hard to believe that anxiety alone can be what's causing your depersonalization and derealization, but it's absolutely the truth. And once you are out of depersonalization and derealization, then you see for a fact that really that's all it was. So what I would do to help you get through this is, number one, you have to first accept the fact that this is anxiety. It's not anything more serious. It's not anything permanent or damaging. You hear people, when you go and you search through the different forums, you're going to see people that have said, oh, I've had depersonalization for 20, 30 years. Well, those people are either have other stuff going on that's causing this as well, but also most of the time it's because they haven't accepted how to deal with it and what the cause is. And because you can stay in depersonalization, derealization forever, but that's only if you let it. And what I mean by that is not, oh, just deal with the symptoms and you're fine. As long as you accept it, you're going to be fine. But they're not going to go away. No, if you accept it, they will go away. And no matter how many times you watch videos like this, no matter how many times you read articles and forums and people who say, oh yeah, no, it's just, once you accept these feelings, they go away, you're not going to accept that because they are so hard, they are so difficult. Believe me, I know. But that truly is the first step. So you have to accept the fact that this is not going to kill you, it's not going to make you go crazy. All these weird feelings, existential questioning, these thoughts about, oh my God, these hands are not me, this person in the mirror is not me. I feel like I'm, in some sort of matrix. I feel like the world around me is not real. To a normal person, they would, find this laughable, but to us, we really know how that feels, and it's probably the most disturbing feeling you can have on this planet. I mean, aside from, a loved one or a child passing away. Obviously, there's things that are worse than depersonalization, but very few things. And most of us would not wish this upon our worst enemies. But believe me, you're not only are you not alone, but this is not permanent. This is not the way that you're going to stay. Of course, always make sure that you consult a doctor. And if you're feeling any sort of suicidal thoughts, you certainly should seek help to make sure that you don't have anything else going on. But 99 times out of 100, it's just anxiety. And once you realize that, and once you start training yourself to not only accept these symptoms, but also accept your life situation, stop worrying, stop preparing for the worst to happen all the time, and just roll with life, let life happen, and be more accepting of everything around you, then you're going to notice over time, and it's a gradual thing. You're going to have days where you're going to start feeling really good, and you're going to get excited, and you're going to think, oh my God, I'm starting to feel better. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a day where you don't feel very good, and you're going, oh my God, am I getting worse? Is this going to, am I going back downhill? Did I do something wrong? No, it's going to be a gradual up and down battle, but you'll notice over time it does get better. You have to allow it. Now, there's some people who say that you need to accept these feelings and try not to fight them, and then there's other people that say that you need to distract yourself from these symptoms. I think it's a combination of both. I think you're not going to be able to distract yourself from these symptoms 24/7, but I do think that you need to do things that occupy your mind. I noticed on the days where I go to work, I actually feel better than the days that I don't, even though I feel that, just the idea of getting up, getting in the car, driving to work, going through work, and dealing with the stresses at work is too much for me to handle. It's better, if you can, than just sitting around the house thinking about your symptoms. So I think distract yourself as much as possible, play video games, read, exercise is definitely a big thing. When you go and you exercise, you're going to notice that you're more in tune with your body, and therefore you're going to feel more grounded, you're going to feel more aware of yourself and your surroundings, and you're going to feel more a part of reality. And yes, right after you finish working out, you're going to feel, a little crummy at first, just because, whenever you work out, your body's a little tired and it needs to recoup, but that's just how it is. But you're going to feel better if you're working out consistently. And so distract yourself as much as possible, but when you are thinking about the symptoms, which will happen every day there's going to be some time. It's going to start out first, you're going to be thinking about it all the time, then you're going to think about it less and less and less. But whenever you do think about it, just remind yourself, this is fine. These symptoms are fine. They are uncomfortable, but they're going to get less uncomfortable. They will go away. I'm not going to be like this for the remainder of my life, whether that be 30 or 60 years or 5 years, whatever it is, the rest of your life. You're not going to feel like this unless you try and fight it. Depersonalization, derealization is not something that you can think away. It's not something that you can battle yourself in your brain about. You can't sit there and worry yourself about it, because then it won't go away. It is anxiety, and when you realize, how do you deal with anxiety? You deal with anxiety by calming yourself down, not worrying about things as much, and eventually your anxiety reduces, and that's all depersonalization is. Depersonalization and derealization is just your body telling you, hey, you need to calm it down. You need to relax, because you're taking on more than I can handle right now. And having panic attacks, that you need to get to a point where you're not having panic attacks every day over this. I remember when I first started, I was having panic attacks, virtually the entire day. I was on edge and would go into various states of panic because I was letting myself worry about these symptoms. And even though it seems like the hardest thing in the world to not worry about these symptoms, honestly, it's the only way. Just relax and don't worry about it. Now, you're going to see other people, especially on YouTube, that are going to say, oh, well, you need to go out and you need to get this vitamin, and you need to, you need to eat this or eat that. I do believe that you need to clean up your diet. I think first things first is you need to cut out all stimulants or depressants. So if you are drinking alcohol, if you're smoking pot, if you're taking LSD or any sort of drugs, all these things cause various forms of dissociation, whether it's a mellow, high from being stoned, or whether you're tripping over LSD. These are all dissociative states, and they're going to bring on more of those feelings. So you need to get rid of those. And even caffeine. Caffeine is a drug. It's a very highly addictive drug, and it is a stimulant. And there was somebody on YouTube who said, and I wish I could say who it was. I forgot who it was, but I'll give them the proper credits once I remember who it is. But they said that caffeine is liquid stress. That's really what it is. It's a stimulant, but it's liquid stress. You are putting stress in your body every time you drink caffeine. So until you get this under control, don't do it. Now, I'm not saying you're never going to be able to have a beer again. I'm not saying you're never going to be able to have coffee again. But until you get back to a right state of mind, you need to stay away from these things, because they're not going to help you. They're only going to put more stress into your body, and that's what you're trying to avoid right now. So how long it's going to take, I can't say. I know that that's very frustrating, is all you want is, when is this going to be over? How long until this is over? That's all I want to know. Unfortunately, nobody can tell you that, but what I can tell you is everybody's different, and it's going to take different people different amounts of time. Some people They said, oh, once I changed my thought patterns within a week, I was fine. Some people, it takes months. Um, you know, it shouldn't take more than a few months if you really are changing your thought process. And when I say a few months, it's not like you're going to wake up one day and the symptoms are going to be gone. What it is you're going to notice gradually over time, you're going to get little bits of improvement every single day. Some days you'll go down a little bit, but you just got to keep rolling through and accept it. You know, don't try and change your thought process for a week and expect for everything to be perfect again, because it's not. Um, you know, you have to keep going and keep realizing that it's not going to kill you, it's not going to make you go crazy, and it's not going to stop you from doing the things that you want to do. In fact, you need to go and force yourself to do the things you want to do. Go out with friends, go to work, go to the gym, go do all the things that you love to do, because that's going to help you feel more connected with society and the world. If you spend all your time on your computer, which many of us do, it's only going to make you're taking yourself out of reality. And while you may feel better while you're researching these things, while you're staring at a computer screen, you may feel a little bit better, but it's not doing you any good because you're not engaging yourself in the real world. So engage yourself in the real world as much as possible. Do whatever you can. Now, like I mentioned, for me, I started in June feeling this way again. And so it's been 3 months, and I was really struggling, and I felt like such a beginner at this because, you know, I had been through this before. I had been through this for years, and now all of a sudden I feel like it's a whole new thing. Every day feels like, oh my God, I'm going to go crazy. But again, I had to remind myself, and a few weeks ago I started feeling a little bit better. And so I still am depersonalized, and I have some derealization right now, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was, and I know it's going to continue to get better, and that's why I'm comfortable making this video, is because I'm starting to realize how simple it is, even though it seems like it's so difficult, and it seems like it's so hard to believe that all these symptoms is just anxiety, but it really is. And so accept it, and you'll be able to move forward. And if anything, it's going to make you a stronger person, because once you get through derealization, I mean, I know that when I'm in a state like this, I start realizing all the things that I took for granted and how simple a lot of life's problems really are. And so when you get out of derealization and you are faced with these normal everyday stressors, you go, no, this is nothing. This is nothing, because at least I'm here. At least I'm living. I feel alive. And I don't have derealization. And, you know, I don't have cancer. I don't have a brain tumor. I don't have something serious. These are just everyday problems that are nothing that I need to stress about, because 99% of the things that you worry about never happen anyways. So just take comfort in knowing that. And it does help to have supportive people around you. I know that my family's always been very supportive. My father has experienced depersonalization before. You know, he's gotten a hold of it, and he's been a good person for me to talk to. And so if you have somebody that you can talk to that's going to be positive and not just tell you, oh, you just need to get over it, even though that actually is the truth, that's not what you need to hear. What you need to hear is you need to hear somebody being patient with you and taking the time with you. So if you have parents, or if you have a spouse or a significant other, or anybody that's willing to talk to you about it and spend time with you, you know, and don't be ashamed of your symptoms. Don't feel like you're a weak person, that you are admitting that you're weak because you have this. Because the worst thing that you can do is just sit there in your own head and try and hide it. Because that's part of how you got into this anyways, is because most people who have these anxious thoughts, they'll keep these thoughts to themselves, and you'll just stress internally, and you're too afraid to show your emotions. And a lot of these things, all it's doing is putting a wall between you and the rest of reality. So stop doing that and just relax. And like I mentioned before, all these people on YouTube are going to tell you, oh, you need to go get tested for B12 deficiencies, or you need to take these kind of minerals and supplements, and oh, I need to take zinc, I need to take this. Most of the time, that's not true. I did have a B12 deficiency at one point. I don't anymore. And so if you have something like a B12 deficiency, it certainly can make you feel more lethargic and tired. And so any sort of vitamin deficiency can amplify your depersonalization a little bit, not because it affects your depersonalization directly, but because it makes your body tired, or your body's missing something that it needs. So it's going to amplify any negative feeling that you have. But taking these things is not, don't think that, oh, if I go out and I take some multivitamins that all of a sudden I'm going to feel better, because you're not. That's what you're doing when you're doing that is just trying to take away things that are helping to make it even that much more worse. But there's no cure. Even antidepressants, there's a lot of people who say that they're not willing to try antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and that's totally fine, because you don't need those things to overcome derealization and depersonalization. But depending on the person, depending on how you deal with anxiety, depending on what kind of mindset you have, there's nothing wrong if you're the type of person that does need that. I was off my medication for a long time, and I ended up getting back on it in June because I was just having too much of a hard time. And again, anti-anxiety medication does not solve the problem, but what it does is it can help take the edge off. It'll lessen the amount of panic attacks you have, and it'll lessen the amount of overall anxiety to help you get back into that right state of mind. But really, the answer lies in you. You have the power to get rid of depersonalization and derealization, but you have to realize how strong you really are and how strong your mind is. Your mind is strong enough to put you through all these things, but your mind is also strong enough to save itself. You don't have schizophrenia. You don't have any crazy disease or any sort of crazy brain malfunction. You're not causing permanent damage to your brain. You're going to be fine. Think about it this way. You cut yourself on your leg, and your body can actually close that wound and heal itself, and maybe you'll have a scar, maybe you won't, but it's as if it was never there. Now, obviously, if you chop off your entire leg, that's a different story, but again, unless you've got some major brain damage from an accident or something, if you don't have any damage to your brain is fine. Your brain is not the problem. What the problem is how your brain reacts to stress, because you are putting your brain through a lot of stress, and your brain doesn't like that. One last thing I want to touch on is drugs. You see a lot of people out there who say, oh, well, I started having depersonalization right after I had a bad acid trip, or right after I was smoking some pot, and so they think maybe it's the drugs that caused this. No, the drugs didn't cause this. What it is if you have depersonalization, derealization, you already had that thought pattern, you already had that tendency to have these kinds of problems. Oftentimes, things like drinking alcohol or smoking pot can mask some of the symptoms and some of your thought processes, and keep your stressors low. And then maybe you'll just have a bad trip, or you'll be smoking too much pot one day, and just for some reason you'll feel weird. And I know from experience, because I smoked pot all the way through high school, and I quit smoking pot a week before my very first panic attack. And I thought, well, maybe it was all the pot that I was smoking throughout high school. Maybe this is what caused my issue. And for a long time I worried about that, but in reality, no. The pot or the alcohol might have acted as a trigger, but your underlying issues were already there. And so unless you had been abusing hallucinogenic drugs for years on end, chances are the drugs did nothing except trigger what was already there. And so don't think that, oh, I smoked too much pot and I did too much damage to my brain, now I'm going to feel like this forever. No, that's not true. So what you need to realize is, again, you don't want to do these drugs again, because A, it's just not good for your body, but also B, it's not good for people with anxiety. People with anxiety need to have healthy diets. You need to get your diet in order. Yes, make sure that you don't have vitamin deficiencies, fine, but again, don't look for that to be the cure. None of these things are a cure, but all of these things, abstaining from drugs, having a clean diet, exercising correctly, not drinking caffeine, these are all things that are going to help you, but they are not going to be the answer. The answer is simply accepting that these are symptoms, that you have a tendency to be a very anxious person, or depression, and that once you realize that it's not going to hurt you and that you will get through it, then these things will go away, I guarantee it. Again, I know that this is the hardest thing that anybody has to deal with, that many of us have ever had to deal with. but it's going to make you a stronger person, and you're going to get through it. So keep your head up. I know that what really helped me was a lot of the people in the depersonalization forums, a lot of people on YouTube. There's some great YouTube videos that I could definitely show to you guys of other people who have explained close to what I've explained, but in their own different ways. And they certainly made me feel better when I was feeling really down about myself. But you know, I've been dealing with depersonalization on and off for 9 years, and it hasn't killed me. It's not going to kill you. And that's one last thing is you have to realize that once you get through depersonalization, it's not so much that you're cured and it goes away forever. You can very easily fall back into a state of depersonalization. But what is going to help keep you out of depersonalization, and what is going to help get you out of depersonalization much faster is what I've been talking about. Acceptance, keeping yourself busy, doing the things that you love. Even though you feel like detaching from everybody, don't do that. You need to reattach yourself with reality, and that's what's going to get you through it. So when you have this new mindset, when you train your brain to think in this new way, that's when you're going to be able to get yourself out and stay out for most of your life. You're always going to have a bad day once in a while. You know, once or twice a year you might feel a little depersonalized, but that's it. That's it, as long as you don't allow it to run your life and define you, because that's not what you are. You are not derealization. Derealization is a small part of you, and it's not one that even needs to be given that much respect. You know, you feel like it's taking over your life. You feel like, oh God, you know, if I throw all this away, if I could just feel normal again. But you know, you're giving it too much respect. You're giving it more than it deserves. So stop respecting depersonalization and stop being intimidated by it, because as uncomfortable as it is not going to kill you. You're not going to go crazy. You're not going to fade into a comatose state and be a vegetable for the rest of your life. You know, you're going to be just fine if you believe it. So if anybody wants to talk to me, if anybody wants to go ahead and comment, please do. Let's keep it positive for everybody that's here, because nobody wants to hear negative stories right now. Everybody wants to hear how they're going to get through it, and because they will. So let's be positive. But if you'd like to speak to me privately, I'd be happy to interact with you and answer any questions that you have, or even just be an ear to listen to you, because I understand how scary this is, and I'm willing to, you know, be giving of my time if it can help somebody the way that others have helped me. So have a good day, and I will see you in the next video.